These are assembly instructions for my mini distress ink storage case. I've been adding to my distress ink collection. Because I don't really ink all that frequently, I decided to go with the mini size. And then once they arrived, I decided, I'm going to need some kind of storage case to put them in. So I'm starting with the piece that is the bottom of my box, and I'm just folding down on all the score lines for it. So I folded down on all the score lines, and this is the interior of my box. I'm going to flip it over so that I can decorate the exterior. So I have a decorative panel in the center, and then I have a panel that flanks that center panel on either side. And on the longer side, I have two panels, but I'm setting this one aside for now. I'm not going to glue it onto this piece. I'm putting glue on the underside of these pieces and then gluing them down, trying to keep an even border on all four sides of each piece. So now that I've decorated the outside of my box, I'm going to put it together. So I'm looking at the inside of my box, and I'm folding over the two tabs at one end and putting glue on them. And then I'm lifting up the short end, lifting up the long end to meet it. And then I want the cut edge of the long end to be right along the score line of the tab where I've just put glue. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So I'm going in with my bone folder and I'm spreading the glue on those tabs. So now I'm going to do the same thing at the other short end. I'm folding over those tabs. I'm putting glue all over them. And then I'm raising up that short end, and then I'm gluing the cut edge of my long side to the tab where I've just put glue. And I'm doing that both on the right hand side and on the left hand side. So that leaves me with 4 flaps at the top of my box. So for all 4 flaps, I'm putting glue all over them. And I'm going in with my bone folder and spreading that glue. So next I want to work on the lid of my box. I wanted to be able to see the colors of my inks at a glance. I'm kind of hoping to build on my small collection of distress inks in that mini format. So I want to be able to see which colors are in which box. I've cut a piece of acetate for the top of my box, and that will serve as a window so that I can see inside the box at a glance. So I'm just folding down on all the score lines for my lid piece. So I'm starting with my piece of acetate and my lid piece, and I'm going to flip it over so that I'm looking at the interior of my lid piece. I am going to take my piece of acetate and remove the protective liner. And this is Cricut acetate, so it has a liner on both sides. I'm putting red line tape around the perimeter of the cutout, so on all 4 sides of that rectangular cutout. And then I'm removing the liner on my red line tape to expose the adhesive. And then I'm positioning my acetate piece over the opening. I'm trying to center it as much as I can. Then I'm putting a second layer of red line tape around that same opening and covering my acetate. And so next I have a frame piece for the inside of my box. So not only does this make it look a little more finished, but it also adds a little bit of sturdiness to my lid piece. So I'm removing the liner from my red line tape again. And I'm putting glue around the perimeter of my frame piece. And then I'm positioning this over my red line tape, trying to center it as much as I can over the cutout in the center. And then I'm just going in with my bone folder and spreading the glue. All right, so that's the interior done. I'm going to flip my piece over, and I have some decorative panels for the exterior. I have the same decorative paper as for the bottom of my box. So this was the rectangle that we put aside earlier, and it's going to go here. And I have the rounded pieces for each side. So I have the offset that matches up with my front. So that little decorative part at the front. I decided to add a little extra trim at the top, so I'm using a piece of gold foil cardstock. This is from Michaels. And it should fit exactly along the center of my patterned paper piece. And then I'm putting glue on the underside of it. And then I'm gluing it down, trying to center it as best I can. Flip it over. I'm just spreading that glue. At the front of my lid piece, I have 2 tabs. I'm going to start on the left hand side. I'm putting glue from the score line to the end on that tab, and then I'm tucking it under and bringing the short side downwards and gluing my tab so the cut edge of my short side is right along the score line of that tab. I'm going to do that on the left as well, just putting glue all over the tab, tucking it under the side of my lid, and then just gluing it in so that that cut edge is right along the score line. So for that back flap of my lid piece, I'm going to fold it upwards towards me and then away from me a couple of times. And then I'm going to put glue on the underside of it, all the way from the score line to the very edge of my piece. Then I am making sure that I'm looking at the long side that is decorated. So that's towards me. And then I'm placing my lid so that the front of my lid is also towards me. And then I'm folding down on that back flap, and it should be just along the edges on both sides and flush with the bottom. I'm going to open my box and I'm going in with my bone folder just along that back panel to make sure that the glue is nice and spread out. So that's the box part made. One of the design challenges of my box is that I didn't want to just stack my inks inside. I wanted them to be separated from one another, but I didn't want our little separators within the box because I find it's too difficult to grab with my big fingers. And I wanted something that you can easily grab the color you need when you need it, and all the while they still have their own special spot within the box. I created these pieces out of chipboard. Now, if you don't have any chipboard or you're not used to working with chipboard, what you can do is cut some 110-pound cardstock. It's a little bit sturdier than regular cardstock. You could cut several copies of these same pieces and glue them all together and stack them up to form that same shape. But for me, it was easier to cut this out of 2mm chipboard with my knife blade on my Maker 4. And those little holes in the center of these shapes are for magnets. The magnets that I'm using, the diameter is 6mm, so just under 1/4 of an inch, and the height is 2mm. I'm inserting a magnet in each one of these circular cutouts in the center of my little square shapes. So I purchased my magnets on Amazon. I have my 2 pieces of 110-pound cardstock, so my thicker cardstock. When I removed this piece from my cutting mat, I kept the negative cuts, and I'm going to use these in my project. Make sure that you keep both parts of it instead of discarding the part that gets cut out. So I'm putting glue all over my chipboard squares. And then I'm placing my 110-pound cardstock square exactly on the top. So from edge to edge, you want them to be nice and flush. So I'm just doing that with all 12 of them. I'm going to go back a step here because something I didn't think about. I want to be able to interchange my inks. And because of the polarity of my magnets, on one side they want to stick and they're attracted to another, but if I flip this over, it won't want to stick to my magnet. So since I want all of mine exactly the same so that I can interchange the ink colors at any time that I want, I'm putting a very small piece of red line tape on the top of my magnet so that I know that the magnet on the bottom is in the proper position to be attracted to the part of my magnet that doesn't have red line tape on it. So I'm going to move through all 12 of mine and see these ones are not attracted. So I'll have to flip that magnet over. And now it works. So that one's fine. So I'm just working my way through all 12 of them. Again, it doesn't like this one, so I'm going to have to flip this one out. So I'm taking a second set of magnets and I'm positioning them over the magnets that I've already put into place. And as I did for this magnet, I'm going to cover the exposed side of every single one of these magnets with a little strip of double-sided tape. So now I am going to glue these 2 panels together. I'm just putting glue on the underside of the one that has the 12 cutouts. So from edge to edge, I'm covering the entire thing in glue. I want to make sure that those 4 sides are nice and even. And then I'm just spreading that glue. One by one, I'm going to glue down all 12 of my little squares. And I'm positioning each one of them within the cutout that's on the base. That little cutout helps me position my squares. So I'm just putting glue on the underside of the chipboard and then just positioning it within the cutout that's on my base. So now that I've glued in all 12 of my squares, I'm removing the liner on the red line tape from one of my magnets, positioning my magnet in the center of the bottom of the well of my ink pad and positioning it onto my platform. So if I should happen to jostle my box a little bit or even turn it upside down, or if it falls, my ink pads are more likely to stay put. So one by one, I'm removing the liner on the red line tape. I am positioning the magnet in the center as much as possible, and then positioning my ink pad. And I'm going to do that for all 12 of them. So now I've glued down all my little magnets. So I'm just removing all my ink pads. I will say that I had to add a little bit of red line tape underneath my magnets so that they stay put on the bottom of my stamp pad. So now I'm going to flip my piece over and I'm putting glue on the underside of it. And then I'm doing my best to center it at the bottom of my box. There should be a little border all the way around. And I'm also going to put a little Velcro dot at the front. So I'm using these Velcro dots. They measure 3/8 of an inch and they're clear. I'm taking the two parts of my Velcro and stacking them on top of one another. I'm removing the liner off the adhesive side of one piece, and I am sticking it right over the little peak that's at the front of my lid. And then I'm removing the adhesive liner on the other half of my Velcro dot. I'm closing my box. I'm pressing my Velcro dot in place, and then I'm taking my Cricut tool and I'm inserting it between the layers of my Velcro. I'm opening up my box again and then applying pressure on both sides just to make sure that my Velcro stays put. So now I'm going to open my box and then just insert all of my distress inks, and they all just sort of click into place because of the magnet. This way my ink pads are accessible on all four sides, and I can still see which colors are in this box through the lid.